This should be fairly quick, as there's only 8 naval vessels within Remastered. Much like my other tier list, this is basically based off of one that was done by Quality Old Games, and if you want to, you can basically find like his tier list here. And yes, I basically give him credit there, of course. And I also basically have, of course, a Google Sheet breakdown. You can basically look in the, the description for it to find a link to it. Let's get started then, shall we? So we'll start with the Lobel rankings because, power ship, barbarian, and boats. So first things first, note that the pirate ship is basically a rebel-only faction ship. That'll basically appear randomly from time to time in the waters of the Mediterranean or around Northern Europe. And pirate ships, for the most part, are not that strong. They're basically a little bit stronger than a bireme or a boat, but they're weaker than triremes and large boats. But what basically makes them a little bit more lawful is the fact that the rebels will be able to get access to these long before you get triremes or biremes, and they usually get enough experience chasing around your little boats and other stuff that they'll actually gain enough experience to actually be a threat to biremes or not biremes but triremes and large boats, and that makes them a little bit more threatening. The biremes and the boats are a little bit weaker, but I'll note for biremes, if you get enough of them, you'll be able to chase around pirate ships, and they can even be a threat to triremes later on down the road if you basically get enough experience on them. Boats are basically very cheap to sort of build, and their main sticking point is the fact that they're low maintenance, basically means you actually have them in reserve to sort of ferry around your troops as you want to. They can't really be used as a combat ship really that much, but I mean they're still decent enough to sort of have around to basically ferry around troops, and that's basically what I want them for. So they have a lot of purpose if not for combat. And I wouldn't recommend using them for combat, but you can. But I don't recommend it. But whatever, they're laudable. Those are the laudable ships. And without further ado, we'll get to the excellent ships up here, which are pretty self-evident: the trireme and the large boat. So I'll note that basically these two vessels right here. The reason I basically have these vessels effectively being the highest ranked ones right here, and apparently the large boats basically right here ahead of these guys. So we'll put those right there. Basically, you don't really get access to concurrents for a while, and triremes and large boats are basically strong enough to sort of be a ample enough threat that you can deal with concurrents when they basically show up. When you get enough experience basically on a large boat or a trireme, they can usually deal with the enemy navies just fine, and it's sort of at the point where we basically concurrents anyways. You don't really need to have the concurrence because you're not really in that that part of the game where the boats are really that important. Usually I find with the recent Germanian campaign for example I basically did. I had large boats and it's maybe see one or two concurrents around it by the time I basically had a fleet of them. And even though concurrents can be a threat to a single large boat or a trireme that they come across, they aren't really much of a threat to a fleet of them. So you can usually get by just with these in your gameplay for the most part, I think. And you're probably close to winning by the time you basically have a fleet of these anyways. So who really cares about the concurrents at that point? I think the concurrents basically a very mediocre ship. And why I have D down here, I have no idea, but let's just get rid of it. The concurrent recipe is probably your last stop for your civilized races to actually have a really beefy ship. If you build a fleet of these can definitely curse stomp anything that basically comes across them that the AI will basically produce. They can ferry around troops as well pretty easily, but they're kind of not cost effective for that purpose because they're basically kind of expensive to maintain. You really just want to have these around to sort of chase around other fleets for the most part and do sort of ship to ship action for the most part. And I got the fishing ships down here from the Scipii faction. The Scipii are basically the unique faction in this game from the Romans. They can actually build their own unique Corvus Concurrem as well as the Deceri. For the most part, you don't really need to have these ships basically in your fleets because they really don't offer enough to really make them really useful. But they're there, so they're deficient. You can use them, I guess, but I wouldn't really recommend this thing. And that's basically the ranking of how I basically put like the ships in this game for the most part. Um, Power ships are pretty laudable. Barbarians and like regular boats are okay. Queen Crowns basically they're sort of mediocre. You might build them if you like get around to them. Corvus Quinqueram and Tesseri don't bother. It's like why would you bother with them? And then of course like triremes and like large boats basically are like the cusp of like what you basically really want to build for your fleets. And that's basically it. So I'll just quickly make a little save here for my stuff. All right, so just quickly just got this basically up. Not a whole lot to say about the naval vessels. So basically, are you know, I think they could have done a little bit better with the Scipio ships and sort of like make them like really stand out. Probably they could have been available a little bit earlier, but oh well. There's my ranking of like the naval vessels. Not really much more to say. Hope you guys basically enjoyed and take care.